The observation pod hummed with a frequency that made Elsa's antennae vibrate uncomfortably. She pressed her six-fingered hand against the transparent aluminum viewport, watching the blue-green planet rotate beneath her with a mixture of scientific fascination and growing dread. Atmospheric composition confirmed, she transmitted through her neural interface, her thoughts converted to data packets that would reach the collective mothership in 2.3 seconds. Nitrogen-oxygen mix, suitable for our respiratory systems with minor filtration. The dominant species, they call themselves humans, appear to be carbon-based bipeds operating on remarkably similar biochemistry. Elsa stood barely 40 centimeters tall, her slender frame encased in a bioadaptive environmental suit that shimmered like oil on water. Her people, the ZHRI, had been exploring the galaxy for 3,000 years, cataloging species, studying cultures, and carefully avoiding the pitfalls that had destroyed so many civilizations before them. Prime among their protocols: never interfere, always observe, and under no circumstances engage in cultural contamination. She had broken that protocol exactly 17 hours ago. The humans had seemed so promising. Their mathematics was elegant, their music complex, their literature rich with philosophical depth. When Elsa's stealth vessel had experienced a catastrophic malfunction over what the humans called rural Montana, she'd had no choice but to make planetfall. The crash had been controlled, her ship's AI sacrificing itself to ensure her survival, but it had left her stranded in a species' backyard with no way to contact the collective and limited supplies. That's when she'd encountered Harry. Harry Pearson was, by human standards, an unremarkable specimen. He stood 1.83 meters tall, a giant to Elsa, with brown hair that seemed perpetually disheveled and eyes the color of Earth's sky. He worked as what humans called an astrophysicist at a nearby research facility, which Elsa's translator matrix had identified as someone who studied the cosmos through primitive electromagnetic observation. He'd found her in his tool shed. "Jesus," he'd exclaimed, dropping a box of something called nails. His biometric readings had spiked: elevated heart rate, dilated pupils, rapid breathing. Elsa's suit sensors identified it as a fear response, which was logical. She had immediately raised her hands in the universal gesture of non-aggression, which her anthropological database suggested was common across 73% of known species. "Please," she'd said, her translator converting her high-frequency communications into human-range sound waves. "I mean no harm. My vessel is damaged. I require assistance." Harry had stared at her for 43 seconds. Then, inexplicably, he'd smiled. That should have been her first warning. Over the next 3 days, Harry had helped her salvage components from her crashed ship. He was intelligent, for a human, grasping concepts of quantum entanglement and gravitational wave manipulation faster than she'd expected. He brought her food, though his understanding of her nutritional requirements was approximate, and provided shelter in his dwelling. But then the behavioral anomalies had begun. On the second day, Harry had presented her with a small, circular object made of carbon compressed under extreme pressure. A ring, his translator called it. He'd knelt before her, which her database indicated was a human posture of submission or reverence, and said words that her translator had struggled to process. "I know this is crazy, but I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to meet you." Elsa's confusion had compounded when Harry began displaying what her suit's behavioral analysis protocols identified as courtship patterns. He would position himself closer than necessary during their repair work. His vocalizations would drop to lower frequencies when addressing her, and most disturbingly, he would engage in prolonged visual contact that made her thoroughly uncomfortable. "Harry," she'd said on the third day, when he'd suggested she move in permanently, "and maybe we could make this work, long term. I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding in our communication." "No misunderstanding," Harry had replied, his face displaying the muscle configuration humans called a smile. I know you're different, Elsa, but that doesn't matter to me. Love transcends species. Love. Her translator matrix had provided 17 different definitions, none of which seemed to apply to their situation of pragmatic cooperation for mutual survival. Yet Harry's biometrics indicated sincerity. His cortisol levels were elevated. His dopamine production had increased by 34% since their first meeting, and his behavioral patterns matched those her database associated with human pair bonding. He thought they were compatible mates. The realization had sent Elsa into a state of profound anxiety. Her people experienced reproduction through a complex process involving 3 genders, genetic material exchange through specialized pheromone transfer, and a gestation period in community pools. The concept of binary pairing, let alone cross-species pairing, violated every biological and cultural understanding she possessed. Harry, she'd attempted again, my species and yours are fundamentally incompatible at every level. Our genetics don't even use the same coding mechanisms. You have DNA. We utilize a hexanucleic matrix. Our reproductive processes are. We'll figure it out, Harry had interrupted, that damned smile never fading. Science will find a way. I've already started researching xenobiology protocols. That had been the moment Elsa activated her emergency distress beacon. Now aboard her rescue pod, she watched Harry's dwelling shrink below her. The collective retrieval team had arrived with remarkable speed, their temporal displacement drive allowing them to fold space and reach her within hours of receiving her signal. They'd extracted her with surgical precision, using a localized temporal stasis field to freeze Harry in mid-sentence as he'd been explaining something about getting married in Vegas. Subject neutralization complete, the retrieval commander, a ZHRI named Kessex, transmitted. The human's memories of your encounter have been adjusted. He will recall a vivid dream, nothing more. Our cultural contamination cleanup teams are already sanitizing the crash site. Elsa felt an unexpected pang of something her translator would have called guilt. Harry had been kind in his way, misguided, certainly, biologically incomprehensible in his intentions, absolutely, but kind. What will happen to him? She asked. He will resume his normal life, Kessex replied, though our psychological analysis suggests he may develop an unusual interest in astronomy and an inexplicable fondness for small statues. The commander's antennae twitched in what Elsa recognized as amusement. The human brain attempts to fill gaps in adjusted memories with symbolic substitutes. As the pod accelerated toward the mothership, Elsa reviewed her mission logs. She would have to file a comprehensive report on human behavior, particularly their apparently indiscriminate approach to mate selection. Her data suggested that humans possessed a remarkable, if somewhat alarming, capacity for emotional attachment that seemed to override logical considerations like genetic compatibility, biological feasibility, or mutual species recognition. Commander, she transmitted, I recommend we flag Earth for extended observation before initiating formal contact protocols. The humans display a concerning tendency toward immediate intimacy with unknown entities. This could prove problematic in broader galactic diplomatic contexts. Noted and agreed, Kessex responded. Though I must say, Elsa, your report makes for fascinating reading. A human attempting to pair bond with a ZHRI researcher. The xenopsychology department will study this for years. Elsa's antennae drooped. She would never live this down. Somewhere in the collective databases, there would forever exist a record of her as the researcher who accidentally became engaged to a human. Below, Earth continued its rotation, blissfully unaware of how close it had come to first contact. And in a small dwelling in Montana, Harry Pearson would wake the next morning with a strange dream fading from his memory and an inexplicable urge to build a scale model of the solar system in his backyard. The galaxy, Elsa reflected, was vast and strange and full of wonders. But some cultural gaps, it seemed, were simply too wide to bridge. And